Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the award-winning, I'll get to that in a moment, Lunch Update, our program to help you stay curious, connected, informed, live in real time. This conversation, like all of our Lunch Update programs, is made possible by our presenting sponsor, Perkins Coie, but also always thankful for the Accelerate sponsorship from Baker Tilly as well. Today's broadcast will be recorded and made available at madisonbiz.com. A special welcome to all of you who are joining us on Wisconsin Eye today. Coming up, we will be joined by the Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Administration, Joel Brennan. But first, let me give you a few chamber updates. This morning, we announced the results of the Fall 2021 Business Survey, which was conducted in partnership with several area chambers and business membership organizations. The survey partners were Destination Madison, Downtown Madison Incorporated, the Latino Chamber, the Madison Black Chamber, the DeForest Windsor Area Chamber of Commerce, Fitchburg Chamber and Visitors Bureau, Middleton Chamber of Commerce, the Verona Area Chamber of Commerce, and obviously us. This is our fourth survey since the beginning of the pandemic. We have been distributing this throughout the last 2 years in order to collect information on our employers' responses and strategies for the entire region. This survey yielded unique responses from 305 businesses. So those are 305 unique businesses. You could only answer once per business. And they represent a diverse, mostly small, locally owned cross-section of industries, as well as a significant percentage of women and minority owned businesses. Among the survey's findings are what is vexing businesses the most are global challenges. So when we asked what are your largest barriers, 65% rated the access to talent barrier as number one, which was closely followed by increased operating costs at 59% of all the response. When we asked about the next two largest barriers, they were related to many local factors, including government regulations at 34% of the response and local lack of clarity on government reopening plans at 30%. 24% expanded their workforce in 2021, so great news there. While additionally, there were 30% that wanted to expand, but were not able to due to talent shortages. So some headwinds there when it comes to the labor gap. 65% experienced revenue growth in 2021, and 24% reported a revenue loss. Unfortunately, that revenue loss side was disproportionately in the high 80s, and in some cases 100%, depending on the percentage of revenue going directly to small businesses. And so when we talk about the K-shaped recovery and the concerns around not just small locally owned businesses, but certainly also women and minority owned businesses and veteran owned businesses, it's something that we continue to keep an eye on, is that the revenue losses were disproportionately on the smaller side of business. 78% have a workforce that is at least 3/4 fully vaccinated. Good news that outpaces Dane County's overall numbers. Among for-profit businesses, opinions on Dane County's indoor mask requirement are split, with 44% in favor and 44% opposed. Among those that said that the mask requirement has impacted their business, whether positive or negatively, 71% has said that the mask order has hurt their business. 66% said none of their employees are working fully remote. That is up from 45% in the spring 2021, and is starting to near pre-pandemic levels as companies realize the value of returning to in-person workforces. The 35% of the response rate Dane County's business climate as above average or excellent, which is up from 18% in the last survey, but still down significantly from the 81% in the fall 2020 response that rated Dane County's pre-pandemic business climate as above average or excellent. If you want to learn more about this survey, we would invite you to the Wisconsin Institutes of Discovery for our State of the Sectors on Tuesday, December 7th from 8 to 10 a.m. The event will also bring together national voices and local experts to assess Greater Madison's economic standing and competitive positions in key industries. We're excited to welcome Kara Sanders, who's the managing editor of Livability, to Madison for this program. Livability recently named Madison the best place to live in the country, and they're one of the first outlets to quantify the assets needed to be the most desirable place for remote workers. So it'll be a great conversation. We'll also have a local panel talking about economic trends and competitive positions. We'll welcome Amy Arntz, the founder and CEO of Concero Search Partners, Bill Chekovic, the general manager of Illumina, which is a West Coast biotech company, has a major presence now in Madison, and Michael Preche, who is the president and CEO of Fleetworthy Solutions. Thanks to our sponsors, it would not be possible without them at University Research Park and Charter Communications. You can register now at madisonbiz.com. Also want to highlight our big night out on December 8th, Wednesday, from 4 to 6 p.m. It's free to chamber members. It will be at the Capitol Ice Arena, home of the Capitals. You're welcome to join us for drinks and plenty of networking opportunities in the Eagles desk, but you can also show off your ice skating skills from 4 to 4:30. And thanks to our sponsor there, Catalent, you can also register on our website at madisonbiz.com. And then finally, I'm pleased to share that this show, Lunch Update, recently won a WAVE Award for the graphics and animation category in the Madison Media Professionals 2021 WAVE Awards. The WAVEs celebrate excellence in local talent and video production, both across the industry, but specifically in web, multimedia, audio, and graphic designs. The award went to Tilt Media, who is our partner in designing the animations for our opening sequence, which opens up every one of our shows. Special thanks to Rich and the entire Tilt team for their incredible work, and congratulations to all of the award winners at WAVE. And now to our guest. Joel Brennan was selected as the Secretary of the Department of Administration by Governor Tony Evers and has served in the role since January 2019. For the previous 12 years, Secretary Brennan served as the president and CEO of Discovery World, Wisconsin's premier science and technology center. Prior to leading Discovery World, he served as the head of Milwaukee's Redevelopment Authority, where he directed real estate development and large impact economic development projects. In addition, he served as the vice president of development and government affairs at the Greater Milwaukee Convention and Visitors Bureau, now known as Visit Milwaukee, as well as working in government relations at Miller Brewing Company. Secretary Brennan grew up in the Milwaukee area, graduated magna cum laude from the Marquette University with a degree in English. He was selected a Harris Fellow at the University of Chicago and earned a master's degree in public policy from the Harris School of Public Policy at the University of Chicago. So with that, welcome, Secretary Brennan.
Hey, thanks, Zach.
It's good to see you. So, I just went over your bio quickly. You have extensive experience working in both the public and private sectors. What drew you to this position? What made you want to be the Secretary of the Department of Administration?
Well, in some ways, it was a return to kind of where I started. You mentioned I had in my long history where it sounds like I haven't been able to keep a job for a long time. That was part of it. But I also, my initial foray into government was in college. I did an internship that took me to Washington, D.C. I worked for Tom Barrett when he was a newly elected member of Congress. And so very early in my career, I had done some public policy work and kind of stayed with that throughout. But this was an opportunity to return in some ways. To be honest, this is something maybe I haven't revealed before, but when the last three candidates ran for governor on the Democratic side in Wisconsin, I played Scott Walker in their debate prep. So for Tom Barrett, for Mary Burke, for Tony Evers, that's the job that I had, was to prepare them for debates. Now, after the first two lost, and they asked me to do it again for Tony Evers, I said, well, maybe you want to get somebody else. But in this case, it was successful, and I had known the governor and known his history, and my wife had done some work with him on education policy. So it provided an opportunity for me. And while I wasn't necessarily looking to get back in, I had this, I think, a diverse background that, at least at the Department of Administration, we were involved in lots of different things. It allowed me to, I think, have had a finger in a lot of different places, a toe in the water in different places, and hopefully prepared me well. Although I don't know that anybody, whether we're in the private or public sector, was necessarily prepared for what we've all had to deal with over the last 18 or 19 months. But, really what drew me back to this was a notion about public service, about wanting to make sure that we tackle the problems that are in front of us and to deal with the problems of today, but to also build for what the future is going to look like, much like what you're doing at the chamber.
So 2 years, almost 2 years in, how's it going?
It's 3 years, almost 3 years.
You're right.
There's an election around the corner for some, and some people.
The pandemic blurs everything together.
Yes, yeah. In pandemic years, we're much more than that. I would say it's been a great experience. The best experience that I have in anything that I've ever done is around people. And the ability to work with 16 or 17 other cabinet appointees, the ability to work with the thousands of people who work in state government, people who have at every turn over the last 19 months, when given the opportunity, they've raised their hand and said, what else can I do? How can we do more? You know, you and I were talking before we came on the air, the necessity of the federal government, state and local government having had to work together on the public health response. I think all of that has been exciting. It's been exhausting, but it's also been really necessary for where we are as a state. I would tell you, and this is not going to be any surprise to you, but it's been disappointing, the political, just kind of the atmosphere and the poisonous atmosphere that I think is here in Madison. A lot of it, you know, it happens at the federal level as well. And I just think there are sometimes too few people who are focused on getting something done or doing the right thing than about accumulating more power or doing something to undermine those who are in charge. And so that part of it has been disappointing, but I would say, you know, certainly government and government work has felt and seemed more important over the last couple of years, certainly than it has for quite a while. And people see that there are things that in some ways only government can do, or when called upon, we are compelled to do. And I think that's what we've all been doing over the last year and a half. But just like with the businesses in the chamber and businesses around the state, there's no roadmap for what we've gone through either. So a lot of it has been about being agile and nimble and, you know, trying something, and when that doesn't work, changing course. That's not something that government always is really good at, but I think we've tried to be as agile and as nimble as possible over the course of the last year and a half in dealing with especially the economic response to the COVID-19.
So some would say this is the second most powerful role in the state government, not pitting you against the chief of staff or the lieutenant governor. So I won't ask you to comment, but it's been said by many different observers and in different administrations that this is the second most powerful role in state government. When you're thinking about that, your current role and the many different expectations that are come of you, of your time, the spheres of influence that you have to be in and out of, managing the priorities of the administration, the agency, what does a day-to-day look like for you? I mean, what does all that look like so that the viewers get an understanding of, they hear the title, but they don't really understand the magnitude of what you have to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, in some ways, I think the reflection of this position is about the fact that it's one of the only places that has enterprise-wide responsibilities. That, you know, we really don't have one set constituency. Our constituency is the governor and the governor's office, the legislature, my fellow cabinet appointees, and the other departments. So a lot of what we're doing really has enterprise-wide function, whether it's around human resources, the real estate portfolio, the fleet, you know, the state budget. All of those things have wide range across the enterprise. And so, you know, from a day-to-day standpoint, it really has a diversity to it. Over the last 18 months, it really has been a lot of the coordination of the work that goes on between state government and local units of government. You know, it was just announced within the last few days the couple $100 million that are going from the state out to 1,800 units of local government, and that's federal money that's going out to them. So, you know, it's all of those things, and in addition to a lot of those functions that we serve usually, it's been the burden and the opportunity of $2 billion of CARES money, of $2.5 billion of the ARPA resources that came from the federal level, and trying to figure out how do we get those directly into the hands of affected businesses and industries. Because, you know, one of the things that, and I think what you're hearing and feeling from the Madison business community underscores this, but the economic impact of COVID-19 and the recession that followed that, it was not as widespread as some of the other things we've done. The Great Recession of 2008, 2009, everybody was kind of hurt by that. And in this case, the economic pain hasn't been meted out equally in the travel, leisure, hospitality, tourism industry, you know, in specific sectors, restaurants and retail. Those places have been affected much more than some of the other core industries in Wisconsin. And so it's been about how do we make sure, in an all hands effort led by the governor and on the public health side, led by the Department of Health Services, but how do we bring to bear all the resources that we have to really, you know, make sure that the people who have been most affected by this can recover from it.
When your appointment was announced, I mean, we talked a little bit earlier, you know, about some of the partisan rancor that's out there, but it was met with bipartisan support. I mean, I remember opening up the paper, reading the emails that by and large, it was well received by both sides of the aisle, which is something that you don't generally see. If you weren't the first secretary to be confirmed, you had to have been, high up there as far as a confirmation. If somebody who has worked across party lines, and which I assume why you got the bipartisan support, what does that look like today? How have you been effective in navigating the ability to both have to work with the legislature, be accountable to a legislature and the executive branch, but being able to work across both aisles and making sure that you're being responsive to the entire state of Wisconsin, not just one party?
Yeah, and I guess I would tell you candidly, I don't think any of us have been as effective as we need to be on that. There have been lots of ways in which I think we've been able to move forward on things together. There were areas of agreement in both of the budgets that were passed, but if we were truly effective on a bipartisan basis, Wisconsin wouldn't stand out in the Midwest as being, the only state not to have expanded Medicaid, where we had the opportunity to get another $1 billion from the federal government just for holding out as long as we had that 38 other states had done this. And so, I can't say that anybody's been as effective as we need to, but I think, I work in a very pragmatic job. When you're dealing with human resources or things like the State Building Commission and the physical enterprise, it is mainly about blocking and tackling and getting things done. And I have had the opportunity over the last couple of years to work on a bipartisan basis on those things. Things can feel very political, and the atmosphere feels very political, but when it's something that's happening in somebody's district, whether it's a new state office building or a UW system project or something else that's happening there that the local unit of government is pushing for, then that person, whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, they become an advocate on that. I think that's one of the things over the course of, as we've been allocating some of the ARPA dollars and some of the programs that the governor has announced that are now in midstream, I've had more constructive conversations with legislators from both parties just because they're advocates for these resources. Now, the unfortunate thing is the reason that's the case is because the governor and the executive branch have wide license on that. We could have that same level of back and forth when it comes to the state budget, and for whatever reason, and people can lay blame all across the various players in this, but we haven't had that level of dialogue when it comes to things related to the state budget, and I think that's unfortunate. I think the process is part of that, but I think the people and this notion that government right now in politics is kind of a zero-sum game where I'm in this because I think you can bring everybody together and do something more, and I think that's why lots of people get involved in public service. But right now it's like I can necessarily not win unless you lose something, is the way I think a lot of people look at governing in Madison, and I just think that's an unhealthy way, and it lands us where I think we've been, where there have been lots of opportunities to do the right thing together. And for whatever reason, we haven't been able to do that in as united a way as I think the people deserve and as we would all like it to be.
You mentioned the state budget. What happened, and you also mentioned the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been recently distributed to local units of government, and the fact that the Recovery Act does act as a glue, a little bit of a bridge when it comes to some of these partisanship issues. What happens when the funding runs out from the Recovery Act, and what's the long-term impact to the state budget and to the state overall?
Well, I think the impact on the state budget shouldn't be significant because I think the way that we have approached this, the way the governor has approached this, is not to start things that are going to have long tails that are going to have to be paid for with state dollars moving forward. And so, these are one-time monies, and there has been a tension throughout this. The tension, I think, has been between, and it's at the state level and also at the local level. The tension is there are emergent needs. There are immediate needs that businesses have, that industries have, again, specifically around tourism, leisure, hospitality, hotels, lodging, that kind of thing. And so we've spent a significant amount of dollars and directed dollars towards those industries. I think there's also been a tension between that and what can we do that has a longer term impact? What can we do that, that will pay dividends long beyond the term of these resources? Now, you indicate that at some point these are finite resources. They're going to run out. We have until the end of 2024 to allocate them. Communities have, the states have until the end of 2026 generally to spend those out. So there will be a longer period of time on which they're spent or over which they're spent. But I do think that, what we're trying to do is to navigate in a way that there is some longer term benefit to these dollars that are coming in right now. And, and I think the governor has been clear on this from day one, that we're not trying to just get back to where we were in March of 2020. Things like the dollars that have gone into equitable recovery, making sure that we can set the table, that a recovery from this is something that everybody who, even those who were standing on the sideline or didn't necessarily have the same opportunities prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, that they will be invited in and they'll have some of that same opportunity, building infrastructure around those things, making sure that local communities have the opportunity to invest in projects that are going to pay some longer term dividends. So I think we're trying to thread that needle, and I think we're trying to make sure that with these federal resources, we are doing it in as efficient and effective way as possible. But the other thing I'd say about it is, all of us, whether you're in private industry or in government, we've been operating without a net and kind of in uncharted territory. And so, we've had a bias towards action, but it's always been about, okay, we've done this step. If this step doesn't work, how are we going to change that? What course correction can we make immediately? What else is out there? What industries are we hearing from now that the challenges that there are more acute than they were 6 months ago? So it's those types of things, I think, that we all need to be cognizant of, and we've tried to be reactive towards. But and again, finishing and getting back to the crux of your question, Wisconsin's in a great fiscal aspect where we didn't think we would be just a year plus ago. We were talking at that point, would we need to tap into that rainy day fund? Now we've got, we made the largest added the most to that in the history of the state, and we're at about 6 times where we were in the budget stabilization fund and when the governor became governor. And so all of those things bode for a really good future and being able to make some of those in longer term investments moving forward.
So, you noted that there was opportunity in all of this too. I think whether you're a business, whether you're a government, you should be looking at the moment to innovate. And as you said, the governor's view, which was to not go back to where you were, but to be in a better place than when we go through recovery. If you could think over what we've done to date, and there may be more to come, but if you could pick one innovation, one new idea, one new policy, one type of investment that was made in response to the pandemic that you would hope would stay permanent, what would that idea or innovation be?
Well, I guess the things that I would point to, and we haven't made the announcements on these yet, but the investments and the direction that we're heading in terms of workforce innovation grants, those will be significant. And I think for a number of the programs that we have outlined, that the governor has outlined, we have been, this is not going to be a surprise, significantly oversubscribed. And so that may lay out a pathway for what we can do moving forward. Local units of government had a chance to submit for up to $200 million for these neighborhood improvement funds, neighborhood investment funds. We'll make announcements on those in the coming weeks. But that provided opportunities for local units of government to look at, okay, here's where we are now during the course of the pandemic and the challenges that has laid for us. Here's where we want to go. And as the pandemic subsides and we get wind behind us, what can we be doing that really adds to the overall economic vitality of local communities and the state overall? And so I think a lot of what that is it provides a pathway for where we may go in the future and the right kind of partnership that state and local government may have moving forward. Because, I hope that that's one change that is made for good. There has been this necessity of the federal government, state government, local government being able to meet the public health needs around the pandemic. And early on, it revealed some of the real challenges and the fractures that were there in that effort. And I think we've done a pretty good job of navigating that. But the overall relationship between especially state and local government is one, I think, that we've been brought together in really important ways over the last 19 months. It'd be a shame if we lost that moving forward, because there's efficiencies to be gained there, and there's opportunity to be made by making sure that those entities are working together.
As you heard at the top of the show and some of our survey results, and you've noted it in a couple of your different answers, there has been inequity in the recovery so to date, and we know the virus is still here, right? We're reading about it on the headlines every day. Places like Dane County and still have mask orders in place, so there are headwinds, and we're seeing progress in returning to work, but not full return. And certainly the workforce development grants that you're talking about will have even if they don't go directly to business, will have a benefit to business. But I'm wondering, as you look out over the time horizon of the next couple of years, do you think there'll be more support available for businesses, or have we seen largely what's going to be allocated when it comes to business recovery?
No, I don't think we've seen the end of it, because I don't think that anybody can really accurately portray what the next 6 months or year are going to be like. I think there are industries that, take, for instance, I'm sitting in my office, I'm looking over the Monona Terrace, and in that industry, the return to making sure that is an ongoing, strong industry in Wisconsin. That's not like, flicking a switch. For conventions, people plan those 12, 24, 36 months out, and the industry really has been laid low over the last year and a half, and that's going to have an impact. And so I think it's those types of things where we're going to continually have to revisit how are we doing and where are we going. And there are other industries, so much of what we're doing now, and it is reflected, I think, in some of your results of your survey. There is so much issue in supply chain, and those who are in construction or manufacturing, there's challenges associated with that. There's challenges associated with workforce. And so, the idea that we're done once these federal funds are gone is, I think, not the point. I think the point is, how do we continue as a state to build momentum now to ensure that recovery continues, but also, and this is a personal value, I think, of this administration and the governors, of ensuring that recovery is one that is statewide, and that some people who have felt like they've been on the sidelines, or particular neighborhoods, communities around the state that have not been invited to the table and not had the same opportunity towards prosperity that others have, that we make sure that they have that opportunity, not that they are given it, that they're given any resources, but that they're given the opportunity to be where everybody else is. And I think that's a Wisconsin value. I think it's something that we all should be getting behind, and resources in the future ought to be committed toward.
You mentioned the challenges, the headwinds of attracting visitors. Obviously, you were in leadership roles in Wisconsin's other major metro in the Milwaukee region, about focused on attracting visitors. What are your thoughts on Wisconsin's brand? Just globally, from where you sit today and where you sat in Milwaukee leadership, what are your thoughts on Wisconsin's brand when it comes to visitors and to things like conventions?
Well, I think it's strong. I think it's still, we still are building that. I think that there have been some really constructive discussions, even throughout the course of the pandemic, between like WEDC and what they're doing for attracting businesses, and what the Department of Tourism does, and making sure that those messages have coherence. I think from an overall brand standpoint, from a business standpoint for Wisconsin, we're still a place that makes things. We still have significant part of our economy that's directed towards manufacturing. We still have significant agriculture. We're a place that's still about making and producing things. But I think, and this goes into for travelers, it goes into the businesses that are here attracting others. If part of our brand isn't about innovation, and isn't about making sure that we are doing the things and laying the groundwork to truly be, the kind of world-class place that people want to invest in, and then we're going to lose out. So, whether it's investments in broadband infrastructure, whether it's the transportation infrastructure, some of the things that aren't necessarily always that sexy, or they don't garner the headlines, but you have to have as the building blocks of your economy. And Wisconsin still has large swaths of the state, not only in rural places, but even in places like Madison or Milwaukee, where you don't have all those building blocks in place. I think that's a place where we need to continue to double down. And I think we're well poised. You said, Madison has been highlighted as one of the truly great places to live. And you have we have the benefit here of having that engine of innovation in the university and the UW system. And how do we ensure that is continuing to play the role as an engine of this economy? And the governor's tried to make significant investments in there. The legislature has gone along with some of that stuff, but this comes after a period of disinvestment in the UW system. And so whether it's in the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure in the UW system, or just the continued making sure that we can get all of the dynamic innovations out of it, I think that's one area where we all should be pointed towards as we're looking toward the future.
You noted the livability study that said Madison was the best place to live in America. Part of their analysis for the first time was looking at remote work readiness. So it was, what are the things that workers who can work anywhere would be looking for? And obviously, when you talk about our driver industries, manufacturing, agriculture, those are tactile. You're still touching something when you build it. The Walker administration famously said Wisconsin's open for business. I think today we probably would say Wisconsin's open for talent. I think it's probably been a bit of a mindset shift. How well do you think we are positioned beyond Madison as an entire state to attract this talent?
Well, I do think that it comes down to making some of those infrastructure investments to ensure that people can live anywhere and work anywhere in Wisconsin. And I do think, we have reached this inflection point. We see it in state government as an employer. We have 35,000 people who work in the enterprise, another 35,000 or so who work with the UW system. And we have reached a point at which, it's no longer just going to be a luxury to have people telecommuting or working from home or working from different locations. It's going to be really one of the ways in which we all have to operate. There are more people who are coming back to state office buildings, but we have outlined and we are purposefully and intentionally outlining more opportunities for people to work anywhere in the state of Wisconsin and be able to work for state government. It's the best way for us to get the most talented people inside state government. It's the best way for us to do that in every industry around the state. And so, I think we are poised well because of all of the things that make Wisconsin a great place to live, the natural beauty, the fact that while we have challenges when it comes to Mother Nature, we don't have some of the same challenges that they have on the coast. So, around, the truly inclement weather or the, flooding or erosion or some of those things, even though we have to deal with some of that along the Great Lakes. So, a lot of those things to make Wisconsin a truly a beacon for people are here. And in fact, some of the data shows as people are leaving some of those big cities, they're coming to places like Madison, they're coming to some of the other locations around Wisconsin. And I think that can continue. But I also think there is a complexity around this issue. A few years ago, and you still hear this sometimes from people in the legislature who want us to put the billboards back on the L trains in Chicago, and like that's going to solve our workforce challenges. If there were easy solutions to these things, we would have found them, right? And so I think people ought to be take a very cautious eye towards anybody who says, hey, I've got the easy solution for you. I have talked to some people in Madison and even some of these who have relocated from Chicago. And I know there's within the hospitality and lodging industry, there's a very focused effort of how can you, get into Chicago and allow people to see what they might be able to do in a place like Madison, as opposed to what might feel more remote in a community like Chicago. I think that surgically, those are things that can be done in different communities around the state. And that's where I think the state can play not necessarily a defining role in those, because those are ideas best generated at the local level, but we can provide some additional help for that, provide some state support. And I think that's one of the directions that WEDC is trying to head to, is to really try to get more methodical and surgical in the kind of ways that we are trying to assist.
Yeah, we did a national perception study of Madison, and where you talked about the L train advertising, which was largely built on this idea of the idealist archetype, like it's Pleasantville, it's a slower pace, it's a better quality of life, which is the dominant brand of both Madison and Wisconsin. But what I think it misses is there's a trend, particularly among young people, that view Madison and hopefully view the state of Wisconsin as a place where they can be part of something bigger themselves, where they can build something new, where they can really put their hands on and make change, because it's not the scale of a place like Chicago, but it has the amenities that make you feel like if you want that quality of life. And so I hope whatever comes out of these new discussions, that it focuses more on that seeker brand, and we're seeing it in some of the tourism ads now, and less on that sort of idealist brand, because even though the idealist brand is the dominant brand, it doesn't help us for the future. It really helps us
it's not necessarily what people are looking for right now. And in Madison is such a great example. The industry and bioscience that's been built up here and has sprung forth from the university, and just all of the innovation economy that is driven by what happens here in Madison. I think that has an opportunity to infect what's going on statewide. It also has an opportunity to be celebrated in the brand work that we're doing and how we're communicating to the rest of the world. I mean, it's clear to us every time we're out there that this is not a static environment. Other states, other regions are really promoting themselves around these things. And for us to sit back passively and think that people want to come to Wisconsin just because they can, sit by a lake and fish or all those are great things, and we ought to celebrate those things. But also people, especially young people, they want to be where the action is, and they want to be part of it. And I think that's one of the things in any community in Wisconsin that you can get to, is you can get in and you can elevate your work in that community very quickly, both in the industry you're working in and in that community and the other work that you're doing as well.
As you noted, the state's a major employer, both in this region, although less after Act 10, but statewide, you have a major workforce that you oversee. What's going on right now in state government? Are state employees back in the office? I know you said you are, but where are we at when it comes to return to office for state employees?
Yeah, there's still a significant number of people who are working remotely, but I think we have reached an inflection point where that's going to be the case no matter what moving forward. And I think that what we're trying to do within state government is to meet people where they are. We want to be an employer of choice. We want to ensure that there are opportunities for people all around the state to be part of the public service in state government. And I would go back to the fact that people in state government have, I have almost to a person see them rise to the occasion at every opportunity over the last year and a half. But we also, as an employer, need to understand that we are in an environment where remote work is not only just going to be a luxury anymore, it's a necessity. If we want to have a workforce, and there's a significant amount of state employees who are retirement eligible now, and a much larger pool who'll be retirement eligible in the next several years. If we want to attract good young talent and keep them here, we need to make sure that we offer some of the things, some of that flexibility that the private sector can offer, in addition to the higher salaries that you can get in the private sector. So what we've done in state government is, it didn't get a lot of attention, but last spring, the governor outlined here in Madison an opportunity for us to potentially shrink the footprint, redevelop privately some of the beautiful buildings that we have here, and provide some additional economic stimulus for the local community, but also make sure that we can best orient state government in a way that it operates as efficiently as possible moving forward. And we've entered into some additional work on that. There's a consultant that'll be doing some work with us in state government over the next several months, and every department has had their own return to work plan that suits and fits them, because there are aspects of state government, people who work in the 24/7 healthcare facilities, people who work in our correctional facilities, they don't have a choice. That's a significant part of the population in state government that doesn't have a choice about whether or when they return to the office. They've been there, they've done that, they've continued to do that. And there are others in state government who are the same. But for everybody else, we need to make sure that we are trying to find ways to have that right mix of flexibility, but still the accountability and being able to operate well within state government. It really is, for no matter how large or how small people want state government to be, there will always be a physical location in Madison that's necessary. There's always going to have to be centralized work that needs to happen. And we need to ensure that continues in as efficient and effective a way as possible.
We're talking about shifting footprints. We recently learned that WDC is going to move out of the Tommy Thompson Commerce Building. So move out of downtown, but not too far away to the new Black Business Hub on the south side. We think this is an exciting development. And certainly, I think it shines a light on something you said a bit earlier, which is this discussion of what does inclusion look like in the state of Wisconsin. How do you see this state writ large, not just Milwaukee and Madison or Green Bay, La Crosse, Eau Claire, but how do you see the state writ large being able to focus on the type of inclusivity that will be necessary to not just retain talent, but also to recruit the world's talent?
Well, it starts with it being intentional. And, from his first days in office, the governor outlined, if you're a state employee, and it doesn't matter where you come from, what your perspective is, all of those things, that we're going to have a high regard and we're going to respect you for that. Within his budget, the most recent budget, the governor introduced the notion of a chief equity officer, a cabinet level position, and having other things within every agency to try to ensure that equity and diversity, that they're not just a program or they're not something you do, but they are infused across state government. I think that's a value that this administration has brought and that we're trying to do. And it feeds right into how we're trying to make sure that we have the kind of workforce that we need, so that, yes, all of our agencies are generally going to continue to be headquartered in Madison, but there are opportunities for people, if there are, people who are on any of the 11 federally recognized Native American tribes who live on reservations there, who thought that, that state government was not accessible to them as a career. We want to make sure that that's an opportunity for them. And so some of that is a difference in the way that we look at human resources, the way that we advertise for jobs, the way that we market ourselves and promote ourselves as an employer. But a lot of it just comes down to the intentionality. The governor established a statewide Council on Equity and Inclusion. It's run, it's chaired by my friend and colleague, Dawn Krim. They have spent over the last several months, not only does it have statewide representation, they have set up subgroups where they are truly focused on, okay, what are the tactical things? What's the blocking and tackling that we can do as a state, both inside state government, but also for the state at large, to just ensure that we are the kind of place that we all aspire to be, but that also that we can be the kind of place that attracts other people. But I guess the thing I would say about this, and I don't know if it's getting us off topic, but it can't just be about attracting others from outside of here. We need to do a better job of growing and keeping our own here as well. And that goes back to, the investments we make in the UW system, the way that we address the technical colleges and our K-12 education system. So it's not just about, being the place where everybody else wants to come, but the best way that we can ensure a strong future is the people who are already here, some of who've been on the sidelines or, who haven't had the same access to opportunity, that we're giving them every opportunity to achieve that same level of success here that others amongst us have gotten.
So looking ahead to 2022, same question, 3 lenses. What does success look like for you personally, for the administration, and for the state as a whole?
Well, I don't think there's a difference necessarily between those 3 things. It's how do we once and for all look over our shoulder and not see COVID-19 as what is hampering our ability to truly recover and truly move forward speedily into the future. So it's how do we make sure we're dealing with that, the public health aspects of it? How are we making the right kind of investments in the economic recovery? I would just tell you, over the course of spending the ARPA dollars a year ago, we spent those about 50-50, public health versus economic recovery. The governor laid out a plan, that was on the CARES Act. On the ARPA dollars, the governor laid out a plan where it was more like 80-20, 80% towards the economic recovery, 20% towards the public health. But we had to set aside a certain amount to still potentially be held in abeyance because that public health, the work isn't necessarily done. And I think until or unless we all personally do the responsible thing, you told me you just got your booster shot, I think today, I'm 2 weeks into mine, until everybody does that personally and ensures that in their own family, in their own neighborhood, in their own community, that they have done that responsible thing, we're not going to be able to get to where we need to get to. So, for all of us, it's about how do we put that behind us? How do we, move forward in the way that we want to and continue to create the Wisconsin that we want to have?
Love it. Final question with about 30 seconds or so that we have left. What's the most important thing you learned about yourself during the pandemic?
I think the most important lesson all of us can and should learn from COVID-19 is that humility is really important. We will be humbled, and we should continue to do that, but we should continue to also have a bias towards action. Do things. If you don't do it exactly right, the right way, move on to something, take that corrective course of action, and just keep doing and keep moving forward. I think that's the Wisconsin motto, right? Forward. So we all better employ that moving forward.
Well, Secretary Brennan, thank you for joining us today. It's a great conversation. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. Thanks to all of you who have joined us today for tuning in. Certainly thanks to our presenting sponsor, Perkins Coie and Baker Tilly, for their support of the program. Our next lunch update will be December 16th, where we will have Karen Menendez-Collar, the Executive Director of Centro Hispano. So take care, be well, and do good. Thanks, everyone.